Hello and welcome back to Math with Miss Rickfelder, and actually I'm with my dog Rocky today too. We're going to be talking about Chapter 5, Section 3, which is going to be learning to compare and order integers. We learned a lot about integers in the last two sections. Now we have textbook page 363 through 366. So on this first page, 363, you should see the skier down there at the bottom. And it says to scan the lesson, list two real-world scenarios in which you would compare integers. So one instance is going to be one of the problems that we've already done. So you can just know this, you are going to use integers to compare distances below sea level. And another real-world situation that you would use integers would be to compare golf scores. Remember in that last section we talked about par and what par means and under par. So you want to make sure you get those there for your list. Now onto the real-world link. It says Fairbanks is located in interior Alaska. The average temperature for several months is shown on the thermometer. The average temperature for December is negative 6.5 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm going to underline December and negative 6.5 degrees Fahrenheit. And the average temperature for March is 11 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, I'm actually going to change colors here to do that. So we have March, that's 11 degrees Fahrenheit. Label December and March on the thermometer. So what we first want to do, I'm going to switch back to my pink pen now, because I'm going to go ahead and look for that negative 6.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Because it's a negative number, you know you need to look below the zero. So right here is 0, notice. So that's the first thing you want to do when you're trying to compare and order numbers. You want to first locate the 0. So right there is going to be my 0. And again, we know that because December is in the negative, it's going to be below that. So it'll be negative 6.5. So we're going to look back here and we can see that negative 0 is where I pointed. Negative 10 is 2 bars below that. So then that means that this one right here is actually negative 5. And so we need negative 6.5. which is going to be, you have to think about it now, it's going to be lower than negative 5 because you're going in the negative. So negative 6.5 would be somewhere right around here. So I drew the dot here, and now I'm going to draw a line. So that would be negative 6.5, which again was December. And then they wanted you to also find the temperature for March. So I'm going to change back to my blue. March's temperature was 11 degrees. Now that's a positive number. So again, that means it's going to be above the 0. So we're going to look for 10, which is right here. And then the 11 would then just be just above it. So we're going to draw that out to the side, and this would be March. So you just want to label it like that. Then the next question says, which months have a greater average temperature than February? So we're going to look and see where February is. February, as you can see here from the diagram, is going to be negative 4. Okay, so they want to know which months have a greater average temperature than February. So greater is going to be in the upward direction. And I've just added a little note here on the bottom that you can add as well that talks about greater being up or right, depending on how your number line is actually oriented. So now we're looking for months that have a greater average temperature than February. So the months that we can see now are going to be November, which will be right here, and also March, which will be the one we just plotted. So we're going to write that on our box. All right, so we'll write November and March right there on the line. Then it says which months have a lower average temperature than November, which is a different month. So now we're going to look and we're going to see under November would be February, January, and December. So let's go ahead and write that here. So as you can see, I went ahead and abbreviated so that we could get all three of them on there. And now it says complete the inequality to compare the temperatures of November and February. So November, we need to just take a quick look. November, you can see is right here. It's 3 degrees. So that's where they got that 3 right here, and that was from November. So now we need to compare November to February. So let's go ahead and look and see if we can find February. I don't want you to erase it, but on my screen, I'm going to go ahead and erase all the things that I've written on this little diagram here. All right, so now I'm looking for February. So for February, it's right here. Okay, and February we can see is negative 4 degrees. So 3 is greater than, and the way that we would write that is negative 4. So that's what you want to have there. All right, moving right along here, we're looking at textbook page 364. It says compare integers. So right up at the top, it's going to say to compare integers, you can compare the signs as well as the magnitude or size of the number. So that's really important because that tells you exactly what you need to do. So first you want to compare the signs. And I know that may seem obvious, but when you're comparing a bunch of numbers, it's not exactly obvious. It's really easy to make the mistake and not actually compare the signs first. So the number one thing that you need to compare, and this needs to go in order, is you're going to compare the signs. So that should come first. And then the second thing that you will compare is the size of the number after the signs. So now let's go ahead, and then it says greater numbers are graphed farther to the right. So that's also something that we wrote on our last screen that we want to make sure that we're aware of. So it says positive numbers are greater than negative numbers. So 2, which they've graphed right here, they've graphed right here, is greater than negative 3, which they've graphed right here. So even though the number 3 itself is greater than 2, negative 3 is less than positive 2. So now it says to compare the position on the number line. So since negative 2 is farther to the right, negative 2 is greater than negative 3. So we're looking here at the negative 2 and we're looking at the negative 3. And since negative 2 is farther to the right, that's the explanation that they gave you, then negative 2 is greater than negative 3. So let's go ahead and look at this example here. So the example that you see here says to fill in the circle with less than, greater than, or equal to make the sentence true. So graph 12 and negative 4 on the number line, then compare. So throughout this section, I'd like you to use 2 separate colors. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and graph 12, which as you can see, they've already done for you, but I'd like you to go ahead and graph over it with a different color. And then I'd like you to graph negative 4, which is going to be back here far, far to the left. And so this last piece is actually what your answer is going to look like. It says since 12 is to the right of negative 4, 12 is greater than negative 4. So this is going to be your inequality, and this is your justification right here. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the on your own here. It says do these problems to find out. So what I've done is I went ahead and put one number line here. So I'd like you to draw a number line as well. You can draw it going in the opposite direction on that blank space there where it's in your work zone. You can draw it underneath it if you would like to, but you just need to make it large enough so that you can have all of these on it. Now we're going to be changing colors quite a bit. So the first thing we're going to look at is negative 3 and negative 5. So I'm going to use blue to graph negative 3, and then I'm going to use pink to graph negative 5. Now remember, to determine which one is greater, you want to find the one that is farther to the right. So you can think right is right, like right is correct, right is good. So right's greater. Right's good, right's greater. So since negative 3 is further to the right, that means that negative 3 is greater than negative 5. So you would just put a greater than sign. And remember, your alligator mouth opens up to the larger number. So now I'm going to use 2 different colors. I'm going to use green and yellow to do negative 5 and 0. So negative 5 will be graphed right here. We're going to graph it right over that pink one. And 0 will be graphed in yellow, and it will be here. So remember, right is good, good is greater. So right is good means that 0 is further to the right, and so that means that 0 is going to be greater than negative 5. The way that that would actually be read is negative 5 is less than 0. So that's how it would be read out loud. And then the last one is going to be 6 and negative 1. So for my last one, I'm going to use turquoise to do the 6. So that's positive 6. And then negative 1, I'm going to use black. So as you can see, turquoise is going to be farther to the right. So that means that the turquoise one is greater, and we're going to go ahead and put our greater than sign. Now I'm putting the greater than sign there, but I'm also going to outline it in black so that you can actually see it. So 6 is greater than negative 1. How did you do? Did you get them all right? Now it says example. Justin has a score of negative 4 on the Trueville trivia game. Desiree's score is negative 5. Write an inequality to compare the scores and explain the meaning of the inequality. So really quickly, I want you to underline explain the meaning or put a box around explain the meaning of the inequality. All right, so then it says, off to the side too, it says absolute value. Although negative 5 is the lesser value in example 2, it represents the greater point deficit. So let's see what that means. All right, so what you're looking at here, the first thing we need to do is to write an inequality. So I know it's been written for you, but I still want you to write it as well. Because they gave you Justin first, we're going to put Justin first in our inequality. And then it says Desiree, so we're going to put -5 over here. So I would like you to set up your inequalities in the same order that they give them to you in. Then that way we can compare and we'll all have the same type of answer. Pardon me. So now we want to look. And we want to say, okay, if we have a number line, I'll go ahead and add one here. We have our handy dandy number line now. And we're going to go ahead and just plot -4, which would be, and I'm going to plot this in blue. -4 is going to be right here, and -5 is going to be right here. So when comparing those two, remember, right is good and good is greater. So, excuse me. So that means that -4 is farther to the right. So that means -4 is greater than -5. So I want to make sure that you are writing this. You also want to draw yourself a number line so that you can have that here. And then the last piece is going to be your justification. So you would say, since -4 is greater than -5, Justin has a higher score than Desiree. And actually, you don't need to rewrite that. But what I do want you to do is I want you to put a big star right here and write the word explain so that you know that this is how you explain it when it's your turn to explain it on your tests and quizzes and your work. You want to pause the video now so that you can try the got it. Nope, really pause it. Have you paused it? Okay, good. Pause it now. Welcome back. Let's go ahead and get started. It says the temperature on Tuesday was 2 degrees Fahrenheit. So Tuesday was 2 degrees. The temperature on Wednesday was -2 degrees Fahrenheit. Sorry about that. That's what -2 degrees on Wednesday. So now what we're going to do is we're going to plot those 2 points. So Tuesday was 2 degrees. That's going to be right here. And Wednesday was -2 degrees. So that's going to be way back here. So now we can write our inequality right away. And remember, I would like you to go ahead and write it in the order they gave it to you in, and then you would just move the sign. So they gave you Tuesday's temperature first, which is 2, and then they gave you Wednesday's next, which is -2. So it should look like that. And then you want to look on your number line. On your number line, you can see that +2 is graphed further to the right. So that means +2 is going to be greater than -2. And then it says to write an inequality, which we just did, and then you want to explain the meaning of the inequality. So that explanation should be the temperature was warmer on Tuesday. So you just want to make sure that you have that there. And then again, on the number line, or on the answer line, I would just write 2 is greater than -2. And you remember you want to keep those numbers in the order that they were given to you, and you just switch the sign around. Great, hope you're doing well so far. Now let's look at textbook page 365, which says order integers. So here it says you can use a number line to order a set of integers. Integers can be ordered from least to greatest or from greatest to least. That makes sense. Then it says absolute value over here on the right. Since absolute value is always positive, remember that's super, super important for you to remember that it's always positive, it is not used to compare and order integers. All right, so what that means is this. It says order the set -9, 6, -3, and 0 from least to greatest. So when we're working on these problems, the very first thing that we're going to do before we even think about the numbers is we're going to put a box, a colored box, around what they're asking us. Because sometimes they'll ask you for greatest to least, sometimes they'll ask you for least to greatest. So before you even start processing the numbers in your brain, you want to make sure you know what you're looking for. The next step is going to be to plot the numbers on a number line. So I'm not going to have you draw a new number line, but I am going to have you go ahead and plot the numbers again over the ones they've given you. So the first one is -9. The next one is +6. So we're going to go way down here to the right of the 0. Then you have -3, which we know will be to the left of the 0, right here. Then we have 0, which will be obviously on the 0, right here. So now it says the order from left to right is, and so all they did now, once you've plotted them on the number line, all you have to do is record them in the order that you see them, like this, okay? So now we're going to go ahead and order those, and they will be -9, because remember we see -9 here, -3, 0, and 6. So that's method 1. And method 2, which you're going to see right here where it says method 2, says compare signs and values. So this one's a little trickier sometimes to understand. So it says compare negative numbers, then compare positive numbers. So first you want to compare negative numbers. So in your mind, when it says first you want to compare negative numbers, in your mind you're going to look at all of the numbers and you're going to say, okay, which one of these are negative? So out of my numbers here, which were -9, 6, -3, and 0, which I'm going to write right up here in the corner. You don't have to rewrite it though because you see it all on one page. So the first thing we're going to compare are the negatives. So the negative integers are -9 and -3. So then we need to think to ourselves, okay, -9 is going to be less than -3, because if you think about it, it's going to be -3 will be closer to the right than -9. So then it says the integer 0 is neither positive nor negative, and then the positive integer is 6. So you can see how that's just sort of like more some mental math than anything. So that means that -9 will be the smallest, -3, 0, and then 6. So method 2 just sort of shows you how to kind of talk it out in your head. So what I want you to do now is pause the video. No, really pause it. And I would like you to order the set that they've given you here from from greatest to least. Notice what I asked you to do first. I asked you to make sure that you put a box around what they're asking from you. You want to make sure that that is correct. All right, great. Welcome back. Hope you were successful here. So let's go ahead together and we're going to first plot our -4, which will show up. Remember, it's tough sometimes when you're plotting backwards. You have to think about where -4 would be in reference to -5. I'm going to add another number line here just so that you can see what I mean. All right, so now that I have this other number line here, I just want you to see what I mean. When the whole thing is not numbered, notice these go by increments of 5. So we're looking for -4. Well, if we're looking for -4 down here, it's pretty easy. We can just put a dot right there. The problem, though, is up here on the real number line, you only have -5. So you need to be able to establish that -4 would be to the right of -5. So that is where you would plot your -4 right here, okay? And so you just need to make sure that you put it on the right-hand side of the -5 and not the left-hand side by mistake. And then we have 3. The positive numbers are usually pretty easy for us to plot because we have a better concept of those. So 3 would be here. And then we have 11, which is positive, so that would be here. And then we have -25, which we're going to go way back here in the back, okay? So now we need to go back before we write our answer, and we need to revisit this pink bubble. The pink bubble says they wanted the numbers from greatest to least. So what that means, hopefully you read those directions, is that the numbers should go in the following order. 11, then we will have 3, because we're just going to read them in order. 11, 3, this one's going to be -4, and then last but not least, we have, and actually last but least, no pun intended, we have -25. So these are the answers that you should have for this problem. All right, so for this one, I'm not going to add an additional number line. We're just going to go ahead and try and order these. Hopefully you did well on this. The first one we're going to plot is -18. So we're lucky here. We've got an actual spot for it, so -18. The next one is going to be +30, so we go to the right. The next one will be +12, so we're to the right of the 0. The next one is -6, so we know we're to the left of the 0. And the last one is going to be +3. So we know we're halfway in between 0 and 6. And actually, there we go, 0 and +6. I just want to double check. Remember how I did, how we had you double check when you were in the last few sections. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect. So now I know I have all my dots. And I actually did not follow my own rule. We need to order those from least to greatest. So even if you forgot to do it in the beginning, you need to make sure that you remind yourself that you have to put a box around what they're asking you for, because it's going to flip-flop back and forth. So now from least to greatest, we start reading down here. So -18 is going to be the least, -6, then we will have 3, then we have, 3, and actually I'm going to go ahead and put these down here. Okay, so as you can see, I'm getting these from here in order: -6, 3, this is +3, and then we have +12, and then we have +30, or just 30. So this should be your answer for F. All right, so now you're looking here at textbook page 366 at the top. We're looking, it says the table shows the lowest elevation for several continents. Order the elevations from least to greatest. There it is again. Let's go ahead and make sure that we get our elevations from least to greatest. Might even want to write yourself a note, least to greatest, okay? So now we're going to take a look at those. The first thing that they did here, You don't need to redo it. I just want you to be able to follow along. The first thing that they did was plot each one of the numbers. So like -105, you want to just make sure that you can identify where all of those are. So for instance, -105 is going to be right there. Notice it's to the left, which is kind of different than what you would be used to doing when you're talking about the positive numbers. And so then after they've plotted all the numbers, then they gave you the order, which is outlined right down here. So like I said, I'm not going to have you rewrite that, but this is exactly what you will need to do. Now we're going to be looking at the bottom, which is going to be your homework, textbook page 366. You're going to be doing numbers 1 through 6, and you need to have, make sure that you explain the meaning and that you write the inequality for 4, and make sure that you order the numbers in the correct order for number 5. So you're going to do all those. And I love this little meme at the end. It says, this homework looks hard. You want me to eat it? You want me to eat? I think it's supposed to say eat it. And so I wrote, no. All right, well, good luck. Have a good time with this, and I will see you next class period.